Thank you sincerely for joining and welcome to Christmas in Palestine, the final webinar of Solidarity Speaks with the Green Olive Collective, Center for Jewish Nonviolence, Achvat Amim, All That's Left, This Is Not an Ulpan, and the Migrant, Immigrant, and Refugee Rights Alliance, an emergency series giving people around the world a forum to hear directly from Palestinians about the ways their communities are being impacted by the events of the last months, about the ongoing violence, and about the urgent need to end collective punishment in the West Bank, Jerusalem, and Gaza Strip. My name is Erez Bleicher, and I'm the Communications and Membership Director of the Green Olive Collective, a binational advocacy, information, and tour guiding center committed to a democratic future and an end to the ongoing displacement of Palestinians. We provide communities around the world with insights into the segregation policies of the occupation and the resources to engage in meaningful advocacy in solidarity with Palestinians. We have joined together today and weekly through this emergency webinar series as a global community of conscience across borders. The occupation does all it can to fracture Palestinian society, isolate them from each other and from the world, and contain them in physical and imaginative cantons whose borders cannot be breached. We have intended these weekly gatherings as a breach of those borders and an expression of solidarity, empathy, and common cause against the limits of the dominant discourse set by Biden and Netanyahu. Christmas festivities are literally canceled in Palestine this year after Palestinian Christian leaders decided not to proceed with the annual festivities in Bethlehem in solidarity with the people of Gaza. There will be no public celebrations, no shimmering Christmas tree, and the nativity scene in at least one church depicts the infant Jesus laying in the rubble. We are honored to join today with Omar Haramy of Sabeel, the Ecumenical Liberation Theology Center in Jerusalem, to discuss how he and they draw on Christmas narratives and teachings as a source of resilience in the face of military occupation and strive to develop a spiritual practice that centers the sanctity of the most marginalized. We are also overjoyed to be joined today for a special performance by Dina Sraibi, a renowned singer and resident of Bethlehem, who came to global attention through her stunning renditions of classical Arab ballads, hymns, and popular music. We are honored to have her join to share a song of hope and peace as we approach Christmas, the new year, and what we pray will be better days. So thank you sincerely, Omar and Lena. Thank you both for making time. We truly don't take it for granted in this time. And with that, I'll pass it to you, Omar, to introduce yourself more and share with us more about what Christmas means to you in this time and can offer us as we look towards a better vision of the future. You should be able to unmute yourself. Are you here?
Yes, I am here. Hi, Erez, and thank you so much for the gift. For the opportunity for me to be present with you. Such a gift.
It's our honor and our pleasure. I see that your screen isn't shared. Are you able to share video?
I am able, but however, I am driving and I just got delayed in a different meeting, and I'm hoping to be present at the place to be able to share my screen and my camera very soon. So for now, I think it's better.
Fair. It does happen to the best of us. Are you able to begin now?
Yes, definitely I am able. Can you hear me well, at least?
Yes, we can. We hear you rather well, remarkably so.
Okay, so just also for your audience, you're not losing much by not seeing me. I'm not the most attractive person in Palestine and Israel. So my name is Omar Haramy.
I'll make no comment there, but please continue.
My name is Omar Haramy. I'm a combination of identities. I'm Palestinian, I'm Christian, I'm Greek Orthodox. I believe I'm an activist. I'm a Jerusalemite. And I'm one of many people who are finding it extremely difficult to celebrate Christmas. Whenever we're asked, how are you feeling? You know, that's a common part of how you start the conversation. And you say, how are you feeling today? And honestly, I haven't been able to say I'm doing well or thank God or the common answers that we've been used to in the past 40 years of my life. It's not easy. I'm driving now, and just the idea that it's an hour and a half drive away from my home or from where I'm driving now, that there has been like 600 people who were killed today. And that's not like breaking news today in the region or in the world. We've got used to the thousands of people who are dying on a daily basis, sadly. Many of them women and children. Really what scares me, it's not that Jesus is in the rubble, this scene that has been, went viral from Bethlehem. And it's actually there's 12,000 people under the rubble today in Gaza. So I don't want to come and say, try to just express how many people are suffering today in Palestine or in Israel or around the world. Because I think many of us are aware of it, or at least we have access to it if we wish to learn, just to find out what the main news headlines happening in Palestine and Israel. That it's all about feelings. If you want to feel to celebrate Christmas, or you want to feel about celebrating Christmas, it's a personal choice and a personal experience. And in Palestine and Israel today, genuinely, I believe many Palestinians and Israelis are extremely scared, extremely angry, and not interested in learning about what's the other side of the story. Everybody feels that there is so much truth, not only so much truth, but complete truth in everybody's own narrative. And in a way, that's really remarkable how much people have faith and are in touch with the context of the narrative. But it is how much people become disconnected from the bigger picture. We wish the picture or the world is as simple as our own narrative or our own understanding. But the more we're willing to get out of our comfort zone and to seek new information, we are challenged with the reality that the world is too complicated. Now, I'm not going to go into the narrative. Maybe me and Erez, we don't have so much differences in really unpacking or understanding the historical context of Palestine and Israel. I mean, through looking at the history. I mean, many Israeli Jews, Zionists have a certain narrative. Many Palestinians have a different origin of the Palestinian-Israeli problem today. And definitely now, how you see the present situation, it really depends. Just follow the Palestinian news and follow the Israeli news, or the pro-Palestinian news or the pro-Israeli news. And it's as if we're speaking about two different galaxies or two different incidents. Everybody's providing a different perspective. But I mean, a part of the boring and the catastrophes and the realities of politics and the situation in Palestine and Israel, I mean, it is Christmas, and we should switch to the Christmas story. Many people are familiar with the Christmas story, but people who are not, the story is a simple story about Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. There's this Mary and Joseph who are trying to find a baby, trying to give delivery for a baby, and they're seeking a place to give birth in. And for one reason or other, Bethlehem has no empty room or no rooms available for Joseph and Mary. And they end up finding a small place where actually fit for animals, and this is where they give birth for Jesus. Now, Jesus is born in a citizen in a country that is part of the Roman Empire, a huge empire, extremely powerful empire, and was known for so many things, not for its kindness or promotion of human rights. But not only that he was born under this empire, he was also born under a king that is very well known for his crazy behavior. Historically, he came up with many crazy ideas, and sometimes crazy ideas are nice because they're thinking outside the box. Sometimes they're very dangerous. One of his most famous decisions that we are aware of, at least through the Bible is him ordering his soldiers to commit a massacre and kill thousands of people. Or at least maybe there's an exaggeration by many historians. But at least the story or the impression that somebody gets from reading the story that there was a massacre of many children. The story of Christmas is also speaking about a group of religious leaders who are not very much interested in what's taking place. Although we're talking about the story of Christmas and the birth of Jesus, many who understand or believe that Jesus is the Messiah, yet they are not interested. I mean, they have their reasons, but for them it's just like a debate, a scripture debate. Then we have like these interesting characters. I find them very interesting. People like them because these are the wise men, the magi who come from the east. They travel because they follow the star. We all see stars. We all see comets. I don't think anyone's willing to book a ticket and fly to the destination of the star. I don't know even if you wanted to follow, even with today's technology, if you see a comet, you'll find it extremely difficult following the comet. But yet those people are willing to come and bring gifts, and they know that an important incident, a historical incident took place. Whether it is nonsense, whether it is out of faith, or whether it was part of superstition, they decided to follow the star. That they saw that something was taking place, and they were willing to follow that star. And not only this, that they would bring gifts or relevant product for this birth of an important individual. So it's actually, if you look at the Christmas story, it's not as joyful as lighting a Christmas. Too complicated. Too many characters. There is also the fear of Mary, a young woman, pregnant without a father. At least this is what. And we also know the story of Joseph, who is also very much confused because he's part of a relationship. He's not sure how faithful Mary was. So everybody's confused, everybody's worried. And I don't think if we travel back into history and we meet all of the characters, including the shepherds, who were scared because the angels appeared to them. I don't think any of them are in the mood of lighting a Christmas tree. For them, lighting a Christmas tree or singing hymns wouldn't be part of the original Christmas. It would not be part of what people envision would reflect a celebration that would reflect what is taking place in Bethlehem. And today, for us as Palestinian Christians, we don't feel that our context has anything to do with joy or with celebration. It's not an easy Christmas. And even like recently, we haven't also had an easy Christmas with COVID. With COVID, it wasn't a normal Christmas. People were not allowed together. People were afraid together. But yet it seemed to be a global problem, not only within Bethlehem and Palestine, or even within Christian communities, but across borders. Everybody was suffering from COVID. Everybody was trying to tackle, or most people hopefully were trying to tackle this issue of a new pandemic and to try to act wisely or in regulation with what health officials and experts were promoting. This Christmas for us, honestly, we feel that it is also, in a way, how we feel it. Actually, we feel that the entire world is also not celebrating Christmas. But I don't think that's the reality. I think this day and this period, I think it's mainly people in Gaza and people here in Palestine and Israel are dying alone. Although we all hope that Palestine and Israel is the topic, mainstream media today, It is breaking news. It is what people talk 24/7 as we talk about it here in Palestine and Israel, but I don't think it's the reality. I think a big part of it is a Palestinian and Israeli problem today. Many people around the world are interested, similar to you. You can hear about Christmas by so many webinars that are taking place. But it's a Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Palestinians and Israelis are ones who are mainly paying the price for this. Regardless, without the need even to do a comparison of people who are suffering and casualties, I think that is irrelevant. I think that there is genuine pain on both sides. And I think it is a time for Palestinians and Israelis, they need to speak together. So the best thing for us for Christmas is not a Christmas tree here in Palestine. That's not what we need. We need to lend our ears to the other, not only the other within our communities, but also the other across the borders, across the wall. Regardless of what positions we are taking, we need to lend our ears to each other and to listen politely and respectfully. To learn how to listen by modeling it to the others, how we should be listening to one another. You don't need to agree with everyone to listen to everyone's opinion, but you need to listen to the genuine feelings of everybody is holding. And to understand that unless we listen and work together and to tackle the root problem of what we are suffering for, that we will continue to suffer. And the extremists and the most angry people and the zealots in both communities will continue to work to create the biggest possible imaginable amount of harm to one another. If we are spared from this conflict, we will not be spared on a personal level, I speak, in the next conflict.
Omar, if I can ask you, I'm curious, you've spoken about how it feels that the different communities are in different worlds and unable to hear each other's perspectives and narratives. I'm curious if you can share more about what the Christmas narrative offers us vis-a-vis the practice of challenging our own narratives, of overturning narratives, of transformation in the world. There's so much there that I'm curious to hear you speak of, if you have thoughts.
The Christmas narrative is a combination of different narratives. It's speaking about so many different people within their same concerns and their own context. However, when we put them all together, they make up the Christmas story. They make the story of the nativity. And for us as Palestinians and Israelis, I want to focus, because the Christmas story is a story that is available in the Gospel of St. Luke and the Gospel of St. Matthew. People can go there and read about it and glue the different pieces and make their own story. The Christmas story accepts us to be different, accepts us to have genuine, different intentions in the Christmas story. But it gives one story that prevails. And the story is that God becomes flesh in the nativity story. That God becomes fully human. And that's the miracle of the Christmas story. That God is telling us, giving us a sermon in the nativity and the Christmas story, is you people on earth, do not waste your time and your energy only on worshiping me, God in the heaven, which we should be doing. And God does not stop us, but says, look at the humanity in one another. It's easy for us to claim and to seek the divine, and that's normal. But it's more difficult to seek the humanity and the divine in humanity. So the Christmas story is telling us that God is not only in heaven, but can be in flesh, and can be among us, and can be among the most of the people who are on the margin. And can tell us that God can also be like the unpopular people in our community. And God can tell us that even the people who are not very much connected with us can show us love and kindness. And the people who should be giving us love and kindness can also show us hate. The Christmas story tries to help us to open up our eyes so that we can see clearly human behavior, not only of others, but also of our own human behavior and how we understand or perceive the humanity of others. The Christmas story helps us to open our own stories. It is not a story for others, it's a story for us.
Thank you, Omar. It's also a story, as I've encountered it, or as I've sometimes interpreted it, that encourages us towards disobedience of unjust laws and towards disobedience from dominant narratives that do not serve to uplift the divine in all people. Uh, of course, the birth of Christ and the making of the divine human defies the dominant narrative of that age when it occurred 2023 years ago. It's something that calls on us to change dogmas, to radically shift our focus, and to focus on the divine and the honoring of what's sacred in new ways. Um, I'm curious how you see that or relate to that in this moment in Israel Palestine with all that's happening in the narrative, and if you'd have anything to share there.
So, so yes, I mean, usually that was actually what I believed in the last Christmas, and I still believe in. But the story of Christmas tells us to prioritize humanity. And we are at a moment today, I think we all need to sit down and, as Palestinians, as Israelis, as activists, anybody who is involved with what's taking place in Palestine and Israel, we need to sit down and just to stop. To stop and to evaluate what are we doing. Are we really contributing to the continuity of the mass killings that are taking place, especially in Gaza, or are we trying to calm down everybody? I think Israel is enraged, whether it is justifiable or not. That is, I think that's gonna be the topic of so many people who are working. So the first thing, the first priority in the Christmas story is to remind that human life is sacred, and the first thing is to stop the cycle of violence. When people sit down, they are willing to listen. And the rational way, when we address a problem, we need to address the roots of the problem to get rid of. Definitely, there are structures of power and injustice that will continue to feed into a cycle of violence. But I believe strongly that Palestinians on October 7th crossed red lines. Israelis is continuing to cross red lines by doing unprecedented massacres. Everybody can justify or try to understand why we're committing all of these crimes and all of this killing. But I tell you, it does not give comfort to the mothers who are burying their children, or to the children who are under the rubble. Who is just and who is unjust? People want an end to the violence. And I think the only way to remind people is just to remind people you are not only killing people with flesh. That is a catastrophe and a war crime by itself. But we are killing God. And many Palestinians and Israelis, we hold religion as a big part of our identity. And we have a respect to what is divine. And just to understand that it is within our actions, we're not doing God any service. We're actually killing God by killing our neighbor. So that is something that we need to stop with. So for me, I am always been speaking justice. I will always continue to speak justice and to confront every structure of power. But for me now, I'm asking for mercy. I don't believe if we speak justice that the people who are in power are willing to listen. What we're telling is people in power, stop it. And I think that needs to be the slogan. And then let's address it so that this not be repeated, these crimes. And not only this, I believe that we need to make an example of everybody who was complicit in these crimes, whether it is from the Palestinian side or the Israeli side. They need to be held accountable for their actions. And we have to do it together. And if people don't want to do it together, we have to do it on our own. It is the responsibility of the international community, the outsiders, to act like the Magi. Because the Magi were coming and just showing simple solidarity with the family, with Mary, who just gave birth to baby Jesus. And the international community, with the international law and human rights resolutions, are the Magi. They need to come and present their gifts to the people who are in the midst of war and in the midst of suffering, as it should be the case for every group of people who are suffering, whether it is in Ukraine, whether it is in Russia, whether it is in Africa, whether it is in the US or Latin America. All people who are suffering, they need to feel the comfort. We all will suffer. We all suffer. And we know it makes us feel very good when somebody comes to support us and to help us in the midst of our suffering. That is the Christmas story at the time of Jesus, and it has not changed today. We shouldn't lose the focus with the Christmas tree or fireworks or fancy dinners. That has never been part of the Christmas story, and it will never be. And that is what is needed today, the true spirit of the Christmas story.
Well, it's very powerful for me to hear you speak of Christmas in those ways and of what faith means. Um, and to say that what Christmas really means is far beyond, of course, eggnog and presents and good cheer alone, but it means being accountable to the divine in the world. And it means being accountable to the divine sparks in the infants now under the rubble in Gaza, uh, to the young people traumatized in the Gaza envelope, in the Israeli communities, to work towards a world in which these atrocities don't happen, and our faith leads us to challenge our dogmas to create that world.
And
Continue.
also, I believe also, Erez, I want to mention that not only that we need to be accountable to God, but I think also if we are courageous enough to say that God and theology needs to be accountable to people. If the God that we preach and the theology that we promote is a God and the theology that promotes the killing of people, we as human beings need to come and say there's something wrong with this ideology, whether it is Palestinian nationalism, whether it is Hamas, whether it is Zionism, whether it is any form of religious extremism, Islamic militants, or religious settlers. Every ideology needs to be investigated and to say, does it really do good to humanity and humankind? And if it doesn't, we really need to question: is it possible that God, who is all good and all knowing, is producing such destruction? I understand that God works in mysterious ways. And I think I don't claim that I am a person, or I'm sure I am not a person with entire wisdom. But I believe it is my responsibility, if it is for me to see somebody who is suffering, a child in the rubble, a child taking hostage, or want to defend this child. Because this reflects to me the understanding of who God is, or the good God that I worship. And and I will challenge every theology that would promote the killing and the suffering of people, especially the people who are the weakest and the people who are on the margin. So let's hold also to have power and courage and faith. I'm saying to do it with faith, because in a way we stand and we promote good religion, good God, or a good understanding of God. One of the teachings of Jesus, the little baby, in the nativity story, in the Christmas story, is remind the people, remember that it is religion is to serve people, not for people to serve religion. And I think that is very important. That's part of the golden rule, is that the religion and the theology that we promote should bring us closer to God and closer to one another, especially the people who are different from us. Not would be to separate us from a good God or separate us from one another.
Powerful. Thank you. And I think this thought that theology must serve people, or that people can God and theology can serve people and people can serve God, and it must be a mutual edification of creation itself and of life. Is powerful for me to hear from you. I'm curious along those lines. You say that the theology must serve the people. It's also true, of course, that at least important swaths and sectors of the Christian community abroad, and particularly in the United States, is rather unquestioning in their support for Israeli policy in Gaza and in general. Um, I'm curious if you have any comment there or on what being part of a broader Christian community means for you now in this moment and the kinds of solidarity that should be taking place.
You know, baby Jesus, when baby Jesus was born in Bethlehem, grew up, and until his death and the resurrection in the Christian faith, never came and said, I'm starting a new religion, which is Christianity or so on. Even the early Christians were not called Christians. Early Christians were called the people of the way. They followed the way of Jesus. And the way of Jesus, so Christianity, in a way, it's very foreign to Jesus himself. That is like my understanding and my belief. Jesus wanted us to do certain actions. And the actions that what Jesus did, I might find them mirrored in people of no faith, of Jews, of Muslims, of Buddhists, of Hindus. And I might see the actions of Christians have no resemblance with the actions of Jesus, as I understand it through the history of the early church, through the stories in the Gospel. So it's very important for us to come and say, as when we speak about Christians, I don't know, Christianity is complicated, different religions, different sects, people interpret it in different ways. I'm a person of Jesus, I'm a follower of Jesus, of the way of Jesus, because I believe that the way of Jesus, whether you look at Jesus as God in flesh, a prophet, a wise rabbi, if you look at Jesus as a source of wisdom, as a peace hippie, maybe, you can have all of this understandings of Jesus. He approached life and provided teachings that I find them extremely interesting. So whoever mirrors the teachings of Jesus by showing a non-radical understanding of God is a person that I admire. And anybody who promotes teachings that do not promote living together, dialogue, forgiveness, seeking the humanity of one another, standing for justice, understandings of inclusivity is not really a person that I find that there is any connection, even though that they could be baptized or they go to church on Sunday. So the disappointment when I feel people who claim to be following Jesus and support the killing and the suffering of one group of people, I don't genuinely believe that we are the same group or the same kind of people. So I am not shocked because of the actions of the people who claim to be Christians when it comes to by their silence or by being complicit and supporting, unconditionally supporting the state of Israel. There's nothing wrong with supporting Israel or being a good friend of Israel. That's completely fine. The problem is when it is unconditional. So for me, it does not disturb me or shock me. It disturbs me, but it does not shock me because the church has promoted many bad, not mirroring the teachings of Jesus, but the church as an institution has promoted anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, the persecution of indigenous people, but also has many Christians, also part of the same structure, have also promoted human rights, doing charitable work, standing for justice. So it's too complicated. I wish it was simpler, Erez, but it's too complicated.
Yes, but making that distinction that I at least hear you making between the religious, organizational, institutional, geopolitical establishment and what it means to really follow the path of the faith that's claimed is so important and of course has resonance in many different contexts, certainly for me in Jewish contexts, what it means to actually live prophetic values, to live values that center the sanctity of all. So thank you for those reflections and thoughts. I'm curious if you have another thought now, Omar, that you want to share. Otherwise, I can see if Lena is here and can join us. And we can also move to some question and broader conversation shortly.
Is Lena with us? Because Lena sent me a message that he is sick, and I told her just to join. Is she with us now?
Let's find out. It seems to be a day of technological and other mishaps. Let's see. Lena, if you're here, are you able to unmute uh, and let us know? I'll try once more. Lena, are you here? And if so, can you unmute? Disappointingly, then, it seems to be a day for the unexpected, and the call has taken a different turn in the exact trajectory we hoped for. But nonetheless, so appreciated to have you here, Omar. And I'm curious then to open it up to question and answer from everyone here. Omar has already spoken about a wide array of different perspectives and interpretations of Christmas, of what this moment means, of Christian teachings that I'm sure will have raised thoughts and questions for people. You should be able to unmute yourself or send, if someone has a question, please unmute yourself and feel free to ask. And Omar, please share your thoughts. And if you do arrive back to a place where you can share your screen, that'd be lovely also. But if not, no worries at all. So the floor is open.
I want to open it up for.
You want to open? You're muted now.
I've opened the camera, but I don't think that you see much, and it will affect my bandwidth. So I'm trapped in a car in the road.
There. You're in Jerusalem, I assume?
Yes, I was supposed to be at home at Kufar Aqab, but the checkpoint is closed at the moment, and I don't know when they will open it up. So waiting for mercy, for a wise man to come and open the checkpoint.
So it goes, Israel Palestine. Does anyone have a question that they want to send to the chat and I'll ask on your behalf or want to unmute themselves?
Maybe we put everybody to sleep. Seems to be a silent night.
I saw people with you. Harriet, I see you have a question. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I really appreciate you being here, Omar. And the fact that you can't be with us because you're waiting in a checkpoint really speaks volumes and reminds us of the reality of the Palestinian situation. I love how you made that differentiation between followers of Jesus and followers of various administrative Christianity peoples. So particularly those who have this narrative that, the Jews have to take the whole of Israel in order for the second coming and blah, blah, blah. So I am wondering from your perspective, what is the best way to, or is there a way to to have conversations with those extremist Christians who support this what is for me a very toxic narrative.
Yeah, I agree. It's very difficult to get into such a conversation, especially when people come and dictate how the life of the other, which is basically us in that scenario, but it could be anybody else, how others should live according to their understanding of scripture. My basic understanding is, okay, I follow a religion. The religion that I follow has certain scripture and understanding. I read it and I apply it on myself. That's what faith is. It's my relationship with God. It's interestingly when people start to use religion to dictate or to say how the life of the other should be with God, according to their interpretation. I find this pretty stupid, honestly. But how do you engage with people who genuinely believe in this? There's different ways. If you have the patience and the willingness to do it. So, and we use this in nonviolence. One tactic that you can use is you say, okay, what should we do with the Palestinians? This land is for the Jewish people. There are 200, 300,000 Christians. What should we do with them? There's 2 million or 6, 7 million Muslims. What should we do with them? They say, let them leave. They don't want to leave. How do we force them to leave? You know, that's like you start helping them to understand to help them to think out loud what they're saying, because they're throwing these statements here and there. But if you help them, if you're willing to be patient and not losing your anger, and just tell them how should we do this? Say, oh, we need to scare them so that they leave. Okay, how do we scare them? You know, and then you start addressing, you know, maybe their eyes would open. That works, not all the time, but it works. It has a good percentage for people to at least to surrender, to say, oh, it's too complicated. I don't know. That gets them to think about.
Thank you.
The other part of it.
Yeah. Oh, I just wanted to throw something in as someone who's Jewish and studies Torah, which I understand Christians also study the Old Testament as well as the New Testament. When I read Torah, I don't see that there's anything that says it's supposed to be exclusively Jewish, exclusively from the people of Israel, who was Jacob. But earlier, Abraham is told that the land will be populated by his seed, and that includes Ishmaelites and the children of Esau. And so, however we see that, I'm curious whether or not your ecumenical liberation theology center centers any of that narrative in your work.
Yeah. So basically, I mean, it's very important. We believe through theology and through your understanding. One of the most touching sayings that I've come across, that somebody, that a Palestinian theologian, Father Rafiq Khouri, who is well in his 80s, wrote it. And he said, you tell me who your God is, and I tell you who you are as a person. Mm-hmm. So when you take scripture and theology, you either come and start listening, you have to start at a certain point. Either you use your experience or what is the traditional way of interpreting text, or your understanding of God, and you try to make the text reflect your understanding, or you try to grow into a basic understanding of that God, what kind of God do I believe in? And if I believe in a good God, is this really good or not? So theology helps you to somehow to develop a method to come and say what is really the will or the wish or the word of God and what it is really not. I personally do not believe that God is a real estate agent and that God comes and divides land and says, you live here, you live there, and that's yours and that's mine, and you know, it is like that's my personal understanding, and that's actually what Palestinian liberation and theology says. Palestinian liberation theology says that you are willing to disregard sex, religion, God, for the benefit or for treating the others with respect. Not that that's our theology, but that's our understanding of Christianity, that this is how Jesus was willing to let go of everything for the well-being of the people. So I wouldn't go into like, I mean, it is who is entitled to live? Are they part of the group that God promised the land for, or I mean Abraham or so on? I don't really personally take this as the way that I interpret who has the right to live. I say that it is that's not like this is not where I start personally, or Palestinian liberation theology.
Thank you, Omar, and thank you, Harriet, for those comments and insights. A very rich theological and textual conversation to be had, surely. I see a question from Sheila and then Nancy after that. We have time for just a few more for today's session. Sheila, are you there? And do you want to ask?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Omar, for what you have said, which resonates with me very much. I just like to make a comment. Do not all the great faiths have at their heart variations of the golden rule, which is treat others as you wish to be treated yourself? And if that is true, then I really don't see why this conflict can continue. That's that's just my own thought on it. Do unto others as you would have done unto you. Don't treat other people as you wouldn't wish to be treated. Thank you.
Yeah, I wouldn't use the term great faith, because I wouldn't even say that it is people of faith. I mean, if you take it into, like, if you go to any daycare or kindergarten, I mean, the moment that children are able to speak, and you say, what do you think about the logic of treating others how you like to be treated? They say, yes, that makes sense. It's not so complicated. So that is my first part of it, is because, I mean, it's when we say great faith or what is not great faith, this becomes a bit, in a way, put one group of people over the other group of faith. And I wouldn't say that you need to have faith to believe in these values. You just need to have some common sense. Now, that would be fine if the Palestinian-Israeli conflict was a religious conflict. There are people who, when it comes to Palestine and Israel, there's a Palestinian cause and there's an Israeli cause, let's say, if we want to call it. The Palestinian cause is not only Palestinian Muslims and Christians. There's many Jews who are part of, who come and believe in defending human rights for Palestinians. And not only human rights, but also the right of self-determination and acknowledge the injustice that took place. Many Jews, not one, not a handful, not 100. We're speaking about millions. I strongly believe millions of Jews now. It's very clear and evident that they stand for the rights of the Palestinians and acknowledge that there is true injustice taking place. And there's many people who are very pro-Israel, and most of them are not Jews. Most of them are Christians and Muslims, the majority, because that is how the world demographics are. So I would be very careful in just trying to. We need to go into the roots of the problem. The root of the problem is one group of people developed an ideology to build a homeland for one people, regardless of the references that they've used, whether it is religious or historical. And they could be valid reasons to build such a narrative. But when you look at what destruction has caused on the ground, I don't think that any of these are valid or justifiable.
Thank you, Omar. Nancy Ross, I see you had a question. Would you like to ask it?
No, you can read it.
Happy to.
Thank you.
One moment. Omar, Nancy asked, If your comments about Christmas are written up anywhere in Sabeel materials or elsewhere, great possibilities for discussion starters and for incrementally influencing churches and changing narrative, celebrations, focus, etc. I think that's very true, and I'd love for you to share more about how people around the world can engage with Sabeel, can learn more about Palestinian liberation theology and liberation theology in general, and yeah, encounter your work in more full ways.
Yeah, I wish we had this magical booklet or book that tells people, you know, it is just do justice, don't do harm, and that immediately people's eyes would open up and they would their terrible ways. Sadly, it's too complicated. I still believe that it is for Christmas. Many people love Christmas because it's a time, a season that families come together, and that's beautiful. Or people share gifts, or people share stories, or people go to schools and see Christmas plays, whatever people do at Christmas. So there's a holiday season that people like to celebrate because people like to have fun. Doing what is right is not fun. It's necessary, but it is not fun. It's anybody with responsibilities understands that paying the bills is not fun. Standing for the people who are oppressed is not fun, but it's their responsibility. Making sure that family members, loved ones, especially the people who depend on us, that they have food on the table is not fun. It's a responsibility. Christmas is a responsibility. It needs mature people to commit to, and willing to take the real path and not a shortcut. And the real path needs people to be aware of justice, to be aware of the other. Extremely important, the other, because it's not only about caring for our own communities and only people who are similar to us. But this is what we all do. Very strong in the Palestinian society. We love to take care of the other Palestinians, of people in our families, very strong within the Jewish communities, the Muslim communities, the churches, the different denominations. We need to be a little bit different. We need to be courageous to care for the other who is not similar to me or to us as a group of people. And this is very much entrenched in human rights and in the statute of human rights. That it's what people are to recognize the humanity of the people regardless of knowing who they are. You know how powerful it is if people are able to watch the news and to see the children under the rubble, if it was mysterious enough to say that those are not Palestinians, that those could be Jewish kids, or American kids, or Christian kids, or whatever kids they are. If we were able to unlearn certain things and just to see kids under the rubble as kids under the rubble, or to see the hostages in Gaza as hostages, not to see them as Israelis or as Jews or whatever. If we're able not to learn new things, I think we need to unlearn certain things. I wish if we could write a book that would help people unlearn what they know. It's not to provide them with something that they know. Just to go back to how God created us with humanity. And this is genuinely, God became flesh on Christmas and reminded us to be more human. You know, I can guarantee you, if people were not very sure about what is the nationality and the ethnicity of these kids, people's solidarity and positions on the war would be completely different. Whether it is American, Palestinian, Jewish, Israeli, Christian, Muslim, whatever it is.
Thank you, Omar. Ernst, do you have a question?
Yes. I wondered, you experience violence from two sides. The Hamas actions, Palestinians who are in despair, not knowing how can they be heard, and the others that Israelis say there's no Palestine. There's no need to talk. And how do you deal with these two sides of refusal of speaking?
There's not two sides, there's one side. One side who justifies the violence and the crimes that they are doing. regardless if they are Hamas or they are the Israeli government or whoever they are one group of people, because they are one group of people who follow, who hold same values. And these values are not my values personally as Omar or as Sabeel. These values, I find them extremely problematic and extremely annoying and upsetting. So if we are able to also to come and say, regardless of anybody who justifies violence and even uncontrolled violence is a problem, are we able to see and put both groups in the same category as depending only on their actions, not on the religion or on the color of skin or on the language that they speak, only on their actions. So how do we deal with it? You know, it is part of it. I think people deal with it in different ways. Some people ignore it, say that it does. Some people deny it. You know, people ignore it because there's people who are saying that's not my problem. I don't want to deal with it. And I could be that one of those group of people at a certain time. I cannot believe that I cannot commit or admit that every day I'm living the pain and the suffering that people are going through when every family is losing a child. We ignore it. We do it. Others might deny it. People become skeptical about the narrative, depending on who are the people who are. I'll immediately share a Palestinian news of if a family or a Palestinian is killed without checking it. And I might be also do the sin of being skeptical if it's an Israeli news outlet. And I'm sure many Israelis do it. We become skeptical, ignore or skeptical. Another part of it is that we actually try to live with it. That's the problem. Not only that it becomes a problem, it becomes something that it is also we can live with it. You know, we've been living with it, with this for 75 years as Palestinians and Israelis, not by wish, but at least within the international community. But we've been living. And the last option is that you fight it, and that is the approach I think. That or I try to push myself to be predominantly fighting all actions of violence, and that is what is to be an active, proactive member in my community and in humanity. And for the people who hold church, when I see that injustice is taking place, I try to critique it, or I do my best to critique it, and I do my best to control it and to put an end to it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ernst, and thank you, Omar. With that, we're unfortunately out of time, but I did want to say to people who asked where they can learn more about the work of Sabeel and engage more fully with it. They do, of course, have a website. They do incredible work. These last weeks, Omar and others at Sabeel have created public events, multi-faith vigils, mourning life, and calling for an end to the violence. And in the context of Israel-Palestine and of Jerusalem right now, where public space is so charged, it's truly admirable work. Also, we had the pleasure of doing a Christmas webinar also with Omar last year. I'll pass that along with the recording of today. I'll pass the recording of that, and people can engage there also. And it was also, like today, incredible to hear the insights shared. Omar, I'm thinking to end by sharing a quote actually from the very first webinar of Solidarity Speaks in October, in which we hosted my friend Khalil Abu Yahya, who is from Gaza. And he said the following during the webinar, and it seemed to resonate with so much that you were saying too, and be a fitting note to end on. He said, I want everyone to just put themselves in the position of the other and then react. That is all. If the world does this, we will all be safe tomorrow. I'm curious if you also have a final note or final words that you want to share about Christmas in Palestine and the meaning of Christmas as we end this call. Omar, are you there? And do you have any final words you want to leave us with today? Seems perhaps not. So in that case, really sincere thanks to everyone. truly meaningful conversation, and the occupation sometimes does make it difficult to have smooth logistical functioning and technological structures. But this was lovely. It was meaningful to be in conversation. It was meaningful to hear your different inquiries. And I want to end this Solidarity Speaks series in general by thanking everyone for joining throughout the last months in this difficult time, and to everyone here who has joined from around the world to express our solidarity, and today to hear about the true meaning of Christmas. We hope that you will take what you heard from Omar today as a charge towards action in a moment in which we as an international community must do everything we can to demand a permanent ceasefire. Now is the time to write elected officials, sign petitions, demonstrate, attend town halls, disrupt meetings, act in civil disobedience, share what you learned today with your peers, and do all we can to amplify the voices of Palestinian human rights defenders. We will send a recording of this event along with all the other prior webinars of this series tomorrow, and are very proud that over 3,800 people have responded to this platform since October. Together, these conversations, testimonies, and reflections constitute, we feel, an incredible archive of this time, with reflections from Palestinian and Israeli human rights defenders from Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Ida refugee camp, Jericho, Jenin, Masada Yatta and South Urban Hills, Jaffa, Haifa, and many other organizations and communities. We hope they can be a valuable resource for everyone looking to more fully understand the current reality in Israel and Palestine and want to work for justice. We will end this series like we began, determined to insist, particularly in this moment, that occupation can only bring despair. The only way to end this collective anguish is to build a future of mutual prosperity beyond partition, occupation, airstrikes, ground invasions, and closure. Only freedom, equality, solidarity, and an end to the siege of Gaza can bring a future of dignity for all. Our thoughts are with all of you around the world, and especially with Omar. Many of you sent appreciations for his words in the chat. I'll be sure to send those to him as well. And our thoughts are with everyone here and with all the guests that have joined Solidarity Speaks. And we hope everyone has good and peaceful days. Much thanks, happy holidays, and Merry Christmas. We hope to see you all soon at upcoming events. Thank you.